So thanks again for everyone attending. If you don't already know who I am, I'm Jeremy Palmer, manager of the LINZ data service, and I'm here today to give you a bit of a rundown of the recent developments that have been happening on the LINZ data service and also the upcoming developments. So really the outline that I'm going to go through today is I'll be covering off our national imagery effort and our distribution that we've been putting on the LINZ data service. I will then go on to talk about our full Landonline data release, or aka the old bulk data extract that we've been putting out through a DVD. Then I'll briefly talk about some of our new features that we've been putting on the LINZ data service, including our user interface update. And lastly, I'll talk about one of our new upcoming major development features, which are map services. So for people that aren't aware, I'll just give you a little bit of context as to why LINZ is doing the LINZ data service, just to give you a bit of a refresher and to put all of this in context. So the major driver for us establishing the LINZ data service, which is well over 2 years ago now, was the New Zealand geospatial strategy, which LINZ is the lead agency for looking after. And that geospatial strategy basically had some drivers in there for New Zealand to obviously release its location information and to get better reuse and enable the economy to grow from that use. Also, it was about getting government, both central and local government, better connected and trying to get some efficiency gains there. Now, actually, since the LINZ data service was established, some other wider overarching government policy came into place, and that is driven out through the ICT strategy. And for people that aren't familiar with the ICT strategy, that is a wider government initiative to look at trying to get better procurement and reuse of government IT and information services. Within that strategy, there are a couple of little facets. One is actually about trying to better release government information, and there is an open data declaration in there. And LINZ, although it already had released the LINZ data service, basically adopted those principles because they were well in line with us trying to release our location information data. Another thing which LINZ is looking at right now, which we haven't fully enacted on, is the other part of the ICT strategy, which is about trying to get better government reuse of infrastructure and making services more centralised or pluggable in so that things are cheaper and faster to deliver. So now I'll just go into the section of the presentation where I'll talk all about our data that we're releasing, because after all, with all the features and services, it's all about LINZ actually trying to release some information that's open and reusable, that's going to help out companies and the general public. So one of I guess our great initiatives that just was launched a few weeks ago was us putting online the imagery. And this imagery is basically available under a Creative Commons license and is providing a 95% spatial coverage across the New Zealand mainland. At this point, we've only released the imagery for the North Island, Te Kia Maui, but we will actually be in the coming months releasing the South Island that will complete that 95% coverage across New Zealand. Really, the types of information that are available within this imagery data set are varying, but at the core we've got a consistent rural, high quality rural coverage across New Zealand, typically at around about the half-metre resolution. As you can see here from some of these examples here, we've got imagery varying from around about sort of 10 centimetres all the way through to around about 0.5. And some of our worst cases, we've still got some imagery in a few pockets at around about sort of the 1.2 metre, but we're actually going to be working on improving that. So far, even though it's only been out for 3 weeks, it's already getting a huge amount of usage through our service. Within the first week, actually, our number of downloads total across the service almost doubled. So, you know, we've got our cadastral, we've got our topographic, and we've got our hydro street addressing data sets all in there and have been used for 2 years or so. As soon as we released the imagery, our stats doubled. And you can just see here through the slides that some of our data sets are already getting a huge amount of downloads, and we've already had around about, I think, 4 or 5 people actually courier service the whole lot to their door, which is really fantastic. So I guess that's what's happened on the LINZ data service. Why have we done this and how have we done this? Well, this has all been through a larger initiative which has been all about the national imagery coordination. And LINZ, roughly, I think it's around about 2.5 years ago, established a project to try and centrally coordinate all of the imagery that's been procured by central and primarily local government and put it together into one central store to be able to release it in a way that people can actually leverage. And one of the main points in there is actually getting the coordination and getting the partnerships going with the other government agencies. That's proved to be a really successful and fruitful project. We pretty much managed to release just about all of the imagery, as I've already told you, and we're also able to pretty much work out relationships that existing procured imagery could be released under an open Creative Commons license. So as I mentioned, the next steps with the national imagery is about releasing the South Island Te Waipounamu dataset, and we'll be doing that over the next couple of months. From there, we'll actually be trying to put further data sets on and making sure that we're actually keeping it up to date. Our commitment is that LINZ will put new procurements from local government and central government onto the LINZ data service if it's been managed to be released under an open license. Sorry, just go back. One thing I actually didn't touch on this slide here is just from a technical perspective, the way that we're actually releasing the imagery onto the LINZ data service is basically through procurement and resolution. So say like a local authority such as Wellington City Council actually goes out and procures some new imagery, say like last year, 2013, they will typically have a specification where they want to get some urban imagery and it's at a certain resolution. Those procurements that are actually acquired and then opened up, that's how we'll release them onto the LINZ data service as a layer for you to download. So at this point on the LINZ data service, to get the complete national coverage, you'll have to download individual layers. However, we will be working on solutions in the future to make it easier to get a national coverage. So the other data set that I want to touch on is the full Landonline data set. For many of you, you'll be aware that we're already releasing our Landonline or survey and property data set through the LINZ data service. However, it's in I guess a simplified but more consumable format at the moment that we sort of term the simplified survey and title data set. Since around about 2000, we have actually been distributing our full Landonline data set through what we called the Landonline Bulk Data Extract, or BDE. One of the initiatives that we actually want to do is transition away from this older delivery mechanism about providing database dumps on a DVD and sending that out on a monthly basis. We actually want to put it onto the LINZ data service, make it available through an e-channel, make it more current and up-to-date, and provide more, I guess, advanced features for actually accessing that information. So include things like the web services and the courier services, and also the feature change set services that are already in place on the LINZ data service. For many users, this data set is probably not relevant for you. Really, the full Landonline data set, as opposed to the simplified one, just contains a whole lot of, I guess, fine-grained, lower-level information. And some companies do actually require that, and definitely all of our existing BDE suppliers are leveraging that product and using all of those features. So, for many people, this data set won't offer anything more than what we've already got there, but for others, it will then obviously open up that richer data set and make it available through all of those modern interfaces. Just to make you aware of actually the extent of the data set, I guess most BDE people that are actually grabbing that right now will already be aware of this, but it will actually launch another 50 gigabyte of vector or tabular information onto the service. And this will be made up of 94 layers or tables. And in total in there, there's actually over 500 million rows. So you can see it's actually quite a large data release. There are going to be a few slight differences for people that are already getting the DVD from that as we put it onto the LINZ data service. We will be ensuring that every single table that we release has a primary key column, and the main driver for that is so that we can actually turn on change set services. For people that aren't aware of change set services, that enables you just to download the little incremental change that has happened from the last time you actually pulled your update from the LINZ data service. And as you can see, with 560 million rows, you're typically not going to want to have to download the whole lot every time. So that service will be a real advantage, I believe, to customers. Also, just a couple of other little technical things. Some of the information that was released on the DVD was actually provided in a mixed geometry format. And what I'm saying there is, you know, there would be a column of data in one table that might have things like points, lines, and polygons in it. We've actually got a system constraint in LDS that means that we can't actually provision one layer that has all of that in. So we'll actually be splitting that out into the individual geometry types. And just to give you a little bit of a preview as to what it looks like, because we've got it in development at the moment, you'll just see it's pretty much as you would expect with all of our current table or vector information that's already provisioned on LDS. It's just really new content. You'll be getting metadata, you'll be getting the ability to preview it in the map, do crops if it's a spatial layer, and you'll also be able to use our WFS services to actually access that information. Right now, our ETA is end of May. We'll be running a private closed beta test, so we will just prior to that actually be sending out an invitation for people to be involved in that, so we can do some early testing to make sure that we've got things right. So please do watch out for that. So now I'll just go through some of the new features that have actually been launched on the LINZ data service over the last wee while. I guess the first of these features I'll talk about now are really relating to us getting the national imagery across the line. The first one is that we've actually improved our current courier service option so that you'll be able to do massive courier orders. Prior to February, you could actually only order up to 250 gigabytes in one courier order. Now obviously with the imagery being released, you know, we're going to be scaling up to something in terms of terabytes or tens of terabytes. So we've improved the courier service system so that courier orders 10 terabytes plus can actually occur, and we've basically rejigged the pricing model and the infrastructure to make that happen. Just to give you, I guess, a bit of a feel as to the pricing, but you can actually go onto our website and have a look at it. You can deliver all of the North Island national imagery for around about $450, which is a really reasonable price. We're doing that for pretty much the cost of dissemination. At the end of the day, you get to keep the media that it comes on. And as you can imagine, if you're ordering multi-terabyte data, you're going to end up with a couple of hard drives in a box. So yeah, that's what we've done in terms of the enhanced courier service. We've also made a couple of tweaks around actually how raster downloads happen. The first one is that you can now go into a raster layer through the table tile tab and actually individually download the original tiles that are mosaic together to build the complete layer. For people that don't quite understand that, when we actually get imagery data sources from, say, like a TA, it's automatically being carved up into certain tiles, which, for instance, might be something like 1 to 5,000 resolutions tiles, and then we actually connect and join all those to create one mosaic layer. Quite often, people actually want to just download some of those individual tiles, so we've given you now the capability to actually do that. Another advantage of this feature is not only in terms of national imagery, but for people that are regularly downloaders of the Topo 50 maps, you'll be able to go in and just download, you know, our new tiles that we've actually updated. So typically every release we might, you know, say update 5 or 10 new Topo 50 map tiles and provision that onto the service. Rather than downloading like another 20 gigabytes to get the complete data set, you can just go in and grab the new tiles that we've updated. And there's a column in there that tells you the recent updated date. Connecting to that, you'll now be able to do actual full downloads of raster layers so that they actually maintain that tiling that I was talking about. Prior to February this year, if you did a tiling, if you did an export from the LINZ data service, it would automatically tile things by system constraint value. So, you know, we would say, well, we don't actually want a tile to get bigger than 1,000 by 1,000 because that's too big for people to open up on their computer, and we would automatically carve it up for you. A lot of people complain to us saying that, oh, we're used to getting LINZ's like imagery in terms of the official Topo 50 map sheet tile extent. So we've now made that enhancement so that if you actually download things like Topo 50 layer in its original NZTM 2000 projection, that you'll actually get that now, which will be comparable to what you currently get from the Topo map user if anyone is using that. The last feature to talk about is map services, which is an entirely new thing that we haven't got going at the moment, so I'll talk about that. Obviously a whole lot of changes happened early this year around us upgrading our user interface. The primary driver for that was our technology provider Coordinates was actually going through and revamping their technology stack to make it more usable and easy to access information, as well as future-proofing their technology base so that they can then add future enhancements which are in the pipeline. So yeah, some of the major enhancements include the ability to be able to put the map into a full screen mode or to completely hide the map. In addition, we've also provided some functionality so that you can actually set the transparency of layers so that you can see the other information underneath. So, map services, which is a new feature which we're currently developing and plan to release this year. This map service offering is really quite an exciting initiative for LINZ, and its primary driver for us is again trying to make our location information more reusable and accessible for customers. As you can imagine, with some of our data sets you've already seen, they're quite large in size and quite complex and hard to access. You know, to be able to take down our raw data and to style it up and to produce basically some contextual base maps to use in your applications is actually a really expensive and time-consuming thing. So we thought, let's try and make this information more consumable and easier to plug into your own application. So we're providing that core piece of, I guess, data infrastructure to access stuff. The service is going to be launched later this year, as I said, and we're going to be running it as a trial, basically to prototype and try and ascertain the full set of user requirements. So we will initially put out around about 4 base maps, and then we'll put that out for comment and take all of your feedback, and then just watch to see what's going on with the service to be able to grow from there. So how are we actually going to do this? Well, we've got the current LDS system with all of its data and information in it. And current state right now is that we actually serve out tables, vector data, and raster data. And that's provisioned out through WFS and the Geodata API, as well as WMS, but I'll talk about that in a second. What we're actually going, and obviously yeah, you guys come in and consume that. That's available through what we call APIs, or application programming interfaces, which enable people to automatically come in and grab that information, make sure they're always getting the current and up-to-date data in their GIS, or they're able to establish automated processes to build those machine-to-machine connections, so you don't need to have manual intervention. What we're going to be doing is actually turning on a couple of new API services. The first one is going to be WMTS, which stands for Web Map Tiling Service, which is a very, very similar, I guess, acronym to WMS, which stands for Web Map Service. WMTS is really the next evolution of the now aging WMS standard. The other service that we're going to provide is a Google Maps compatible XYZ service. So for people that have used things like the Google Maps API application, you'll be able to grab data from the LINZ data service and overlay it in applications applications such as Google Maps. The first stage will be for us to actually serve out our existing raster data sets through those interfaces, so things like Topo 50, Topo 250, and all of our newly released imagery layers will be available through that interface. After that, we're going to be developing some actual some mapping base maps to actually serve out through there. And that's about us taking our existing data stores that sit in the LINZ data service and applying cartography rules to it and providing it out as a map service. And all of this really, we believe, is going to further improve the usability of our data and enable, I guess, mobile web app developers to come in and start using our information in an easier way, as well as the existing customer base. You know, a lot of GIS professionals and stuff will also be able to use this in their desktop products. Just a quick comment about our existing OGC Web Map Service, or WMS, versus this new OGC WMTS. We have plans actually to phase out the use of WMS. Right now, if you're not aware, WMS is available for just our raster data sets. We don't provide any vector data out through those APIs. But we're going to be phasing that out in favour of WMTS. And the crux of that basically is that WMS is old, it's slow, it's not scalable, and we're pretty much not going to be able to support it going forward. So we're going to be turning that off in the future. We haven't quite got our timeframes for that sorted out, and we will be basically promoting WMTS going forward. So what's this WMTS thing I've been talking about? It's maybe a little bit sort of nebulous at this point. I'll just give a little bit of a technical explanation as to what it is. So you can imagine that a client actually wants to get a map screen to put into their application to have as context. So you'll have an extent that you're after, and you'll obviously have a coordinate system that you're interested in. The way that the web map tiling service works, and tiling is the key point, is that we actually pre-render all of the mapping data into a predefined matrix of tiles that covers the whole data set at various predefined scale resolutions. And I think technically what we're going to be doing is carving it up into 256 by 256 tiles. And what the client does is it comes in and requests all those tiles and basically mosaics them together to produce the end result. You've probably seen this in action, you know, if you're zooming around in Google Maps or something now, and all of a sudden, like, you might notice that like one little square of the map hasn't turned up or something like that. That's what the tiling is, and that's just the reason why that tile hasn't turned up, is it's actually still being served here. So the scaling part which I was talking about, so you've got a predefined set of actual zoom levels that is constructed, and then each one of those zoom levels is rendered out into these individual tiles. And all of this basically produces an environment which is really fast to serve out. Everything is cache, nothing is has to be dynamically generated by the server, so it produces a much more user-friendly result. We are going to be providing out our map tile services in 2 core projections, because obviously one of the restrictions with this pre-caching is that you have to predefine your projections. So we're going to be doing 2. One is LINZ's official mapping projection, which is NZTM 2000, which covers the New Zealand mainland. And the second one, to provide that wider coverage and also compatibility with existing web apps, is the World Mercator projection. And that's what things like Bing and Google Maps and OpenStreetMaps currently use. So here's just a couple of screenshots actually showing how current GIS professionals can leverage these map services in their clients. You'll be able to connect through WMTS and add it into things such as ArcGIS, or you'll be able to add it into open source products such as Quantum GIS. And the result should basically be exactly the same as WMS at the end of the day, but much, much quicker. There is one other additional feature that we're going to be turning on in WMTS, which is optional, which is called Get Feature Info, which gives you the ability to basically get some of the data or the attribute information in behind a a place on the screen that you might click. So you can imagine that you might just like click on one of the parcels here in this screenshot, and you actually want to know what's the legal description of who are the owners. So that capability will be there, and clients that are supporting it, either GIS or web map, will be able to do that. And that just adds to the overall richness of being able to try and easily use these base maps. Obviously, as I've been talking about, you'll be able to take these WMTS or XYZ feeds and put it into your own web mapping application. So that'll include a wide variety of open source packages such as Leaflet or Open Layers, and then of course Google Maps. So now I'll just actually go on to talk about some of the content that we're going to be providing out through these web map services, along with the rest of the data sets I talked about. The first one is the Parcels base maps. And one of the clear observations that we've made over the last 2 years is that lots and lots of people download the Parcels dataset only to bring it into their GIS system to use it as context. And that can actually be quite a long-winded process, particularly if you're after a national data set. The Parcels weighs in at something like about 6 gigabytes if you download it in shapefile. So what we're going to do is tile that into a tile service and provide that through a lightweight interface for people to get access to. And we're going to be initially putting out 2 prototype parcel base maps. One is what we're calling a wireframe, which is basically just an outline of the parcel, and then it's got a transparent fill on it. And the main reason for that is you'll be able to actually overlay that over the top of other data sets. So in this example here, we've got the imagery data set underneath, and we've just overlaid the Parcels wireframe on that. And that's, we believe, is going to be a pretty big use case. The other base map, which you can actually see here on the right-hand side, is a more coloured style version of the Parcels fabric. And we'll be basically just colouring things like roads and hydro parcels with a different colour. But the parcel fill will obviously won't be transparent, so it won't be useful for overlaying over the top of other information, more as just a cadastral base map for you to put other things over the top of. Beyond there, I guess we're going to be launching 2 new base maps which are in line with Topo products and services. The first is a black and white base map, which is about providing that context for people to be able to overlay their other user information on the top of. This information will include data from a national DEM provided by Geographics, and also our Topo 50 and cadastral information. It's styled in a way that some information is displaying at sort of the higher scales and doesn't display at the lower scale. So for instance, like maybe the high level Topo 500 or 250 information displays at those higher scales, and then as you start drilling in, then things like parcels and roads and labels and stuff will turn up. As you can see here in this example, we've got just the plain base map here on the left-hand side, and we've got a zoom in around the Christchurch CBD. On the right-hand side, we've just got some metro stop points which have been overlaid, and you can see the impact of being able to see those really well. While I'm saying that this is a black and white base map, there is a little bit of colour just put in there just to provide that little bit of contrast. But in general, the spectrum of colours that we're using is really narrow, so that enables lots of, I guess, user information to be overlaid in a wider spectrum of data to make that stand out. The other base map that we'll be creating is a natural colour base map. And this base map has got a wider spectrum of colours and is more about trying to provide something that looks, I guess, more realistic. We're still not using the full, I guess, spectrum of colours here, so it does enable you to still overlay your user information, and yeah, we're really excited about this base map. It's got a really high quality. Just in general about all of these base maps, it's our goal that as soon as we update the data that actually underlies all of this, then our base maps will be also updated at the same time. So you'll be able to come in and use our cadastral or topo base maps and have confidence that it's authoritative and it's current. So that's our goal. To put this, I guess, all in context for you guys, particularly around these topo base maps, is there's currently a topographic strategy that's out for comment at the moment, which I think closes at the end of May. There are three, I guess, key objectives within that topographic strategy. The first one is to actually represent real-world features into our databases in a timely and spatially accurate way. And that's really, I guess, about trying to shift just a little bit away from where we are right now to concentrate primarily on the data. Doesn't mean that we're going to be moving it all away from our current topographic products. We are still definitely going to be doing those into the future, but we just have a slight shift to make sure that we're trying to treat our data as a much more valuable asset. And that's obviously really in line with about LINZ trying to disseminate its open information and try and add value to the location information system. Now the second point is actually about trying to get some coordination across the government or the wider sector to get access to publicly available topographic information. And this coordination is about trying to bring it all together and produce some national data sets that we can easily release out. As many of you will be aware, that there is a lot of really high value topographic information that's all in little pockets around the country and is maybe inconsistent or isn't fully exposed. So we've definitely got some aspirations there to try and bring that up and make it easily accessible at a national level. The third point, which really does underpin why we're doing these base maps, is about trying to provide more topographic map services in an electronic form, so such as our WMTS feeds of our maps. So yeah, please do go and have a look at that topographic strategy, and if you've got any questions, then send it through the channel. Also, some of the topographic team is here at the moment, so there's Aaron and Fran over there, so you can ask them a few quick questions at the end as well. So that really pretty much concludes the presentation. So yeah, questions, I guess.
With your web tile service, you had in the diagram you go down to level 18. Is that the level that you're going to go to, or will you go below that?
No. So actually, for our I guess our Google Maps compatible tile service, that will probably go down to level 20, I believe. And it may even go further than that. I'll have to actually get that clarified. So yeah, no, it's not going to 18. That was just an example on that slide there. With the transverse Mercator tile set that we'll be producing, that definitely does go down to 20. And we will be publishing a document on our website actually explaining what all of those scales and resolutions are when we actually do it.
Hi, this is Quinn Wood from Lewa. Cool stuff. The problem we have with it, along with agencies like EPI, most environmental CRIs, etc., is our maps include the offshore islands. Mm-hmm. We often need to go out to the Pacific, across the Tasman to Australia with the Ross Dependency. Mm-hmm. Is there any goal and any plan to actually extend the coverage so that your base maps can actually be used within that wider context?
Yes, definitely. So our initial trials that we put out will have the Chatham Islands in it, and then from there we will exclude out to we'll include out to the wider offshore islands with our current topographic data. We haven't at all scoped or got anything in the pipeline to do coverage across Antarctica, but that could definitely be a possibility. So, I mean, we can definitely have some conversations about that opportunity if you like. Yes.
Yeah, Murray Black, Map.
Hey, Murray.
Are there any moves to source local authority data other than the imagery?
Yeah, so that's about, I guess, this topographic strategy that I was talking about. So we're obviously hoping to partner up and build relationships so that we can actually try and release that other local government information and provide it out through a consistent central feed. I mean, it's very, very early on, so we don't really have any details about that, but it's a higher level strategic goal of us to do that.
Okay, so in terms of, say, valuation data or utility information?
Yes, all of those things are in scope, but I can't definitely say whether it's on or out at this point.
This public good data, is LINZ waiting for data to become public for other organisations to be quite happy to give it away? Or is there some funding being put into the system somewhere to encourage organisations to release data on a public good basis?
At this point, I'm not sure that we're actually got a pool of money that we're actually dedicating to it, but we definitely aren't just waiting for local authorities to actually release their data. We're being more proactive and having conversations with them and letting them see the overall, I guess New Zealand geospatial kind of strategy and vision, and saying, well, hey, look, if we're to make this happen, we need to obviously open it up, and we need to work together and collaborate to try and produce a product that people can actually access. So far, all of our conversations have been really positive with the local authorities that we're talking to, and they're really on board. So we haven't seen a huge amount of friction. It's all just about the amount of resource that we've got and being able to do the best with what we've got at the moment.
Generally, certainly in the imagery area, there's a pool of funding that's been brought together by a number of government agencies.
That's right,
to
yeah.
encourage that to release certain imagery data.
Yeah, you'll be able to talk more about, apart from imagery, which was this guy's question. I don't think we do have a pool of money, do we? No. Sorry, did you have another follow-up question to that? Didn't quite fully answer the things.
Perhaps we can take that up with you afterwards.
Okay, sure.
I'm concerned about the people who actually produce the imagery, like NZAM, who in the old days used to be able to sell it several times to lots of people. So they kind of need to be getting more money if it's going to.
So I mean, obviously other people in the room can probably talk to you in more detail about this, but in general, we have actually been, working with the TAs and also with these other companies that are providing the imagery to basically set up a sustainable way that it can actually be procured in an open way, so that they're getting full compensation for the work and the procurement efforts that are going on.
A lot of what you've said today deals with the modern world, what is there at the moment. Within the survey records and the early era photographs and field books and so forth, there's a huge amount of historical information relating to Maori history, European history, coastal change, for example, erosion, deposition on coasts and that sort of thing. Yet some of that information is just not available, or very difficult to get hold of, or the quality of the information is extremely variable. Have you any plans to include that type of data and to improve the presentation?
At this point, there's nothing at all in our work planning to actually look at that. I personally agree that there's some really excellent information there. That the real issue is it just comes down to resource and money, and some of those records to actually digitise and provide are really, really expensive. So, in general, yes, we want to try and release as much of our information as possible, but we're really concentrating in on the high value stuff, and then we're basically working down from there. So, it may well be that at a certain point, if it moves itself up the priority listing and that we get enough demand for those types of things, then yeah, it comes on our agenda and we focus on trying to provision that type of information.
Yeah, Edward Hartman. With the image service, is it LINZ's idea to get all that's in there now and then just go forward, or is it going to be an area where they're going to be going back and get historical imagery from TAs?
Okay, yeah, we do actually have an initiative going on in LINZ at the moment, which is in very early stages, called the Historic Imagery Project. And at this point, we are just running a pilot to actually scan some of the historic Crown archives. And that initiative is around trying to preserve the imagery as well as taking it to the next step where it can potentially be made more accessible. But as I said, it's in a pilot phase at this point, so the case needs to be proved to then expand out to do the full Crown archive. Distribution at this point is further down the track, so we haven't got any clear plans on actually distributing it at this point.
more specific about the release of the base layers, what timeline-wise?
No, unfortunately, I can't be really specific about that because we're still just got a few issues to get over with our national imagery distribution. So as soon as we've cleared the backlog of those things, then the map services becomes the priority for us. So we'll put out some communications around that as soon as we know.
Thank you. Looks great. You've obviously got a big hosting system there. Is there a place for the private sector to put their data up there to be on equal terms with us?
So just to clarify that question, is that about just putting your private data set up there exclusive from anything else, or to contribute it as part of aggregating into a wider data set?
Possibly both, but I think you've moved into a grey area when you started to produce base maps. You originally were providing just raw data and people with that data. Now you're moving into base maps. It's getting a little bit heavy, I think. And OpenStreetMap, I think you went down that route because it was free rather than this quality. So where are you balancing quality versus volume?
So I mean, obviously one of our main strategic things is to make sure that everything we do is open and accessible and can be reused. So that is our overarching principle for everything. So the base maps that we'll be putting together at this point are all just using open information, and that just clearly demarcates the line between things. To be honest, we haven't clearly thought about that opportunity to potentially leverage private closed license data sets, and I think maybe there's an opportunity there for us to explore that. But at this point, it's saying we're clearly just focusing on information that is free and open. And these base maps are really a vehicle to help also mature that conversation, so that when we're talking with local councils, they can use the base map, they can see where their data is actually contributing to, so that it helps enable those conversations as well. So yeah, it really is just holistic for the short term to medium term, and the information that's openly available. Not necessarily just LINZ's information, as I've said, but yeah, it has to be open. So I mean, there's definitely an opportunity there, I think, to get Cool. Oh well, I'm going to be hanging around for half an hour afterwards, so if there's some questions that you actually want to ask on a more personal level, feel free to come up and have a conversation. But again, thank you very much for coming along. It's been an excellent turnout, and yeah, please stay tuned to our communications coming out